And Mike Folta, radio voice of the Utah Hockey Club, joins us now. And his appearance brought to you by the folks at Hercules. Hercules First Federal Credit Union, growing stronger together. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. So sorry for missing you earlier. You caught me out celebrating the big win last night.
I figured. Just rolling in. That's how the Boilermakers do it.
Especially in Salt Lake City, Utah, the town that never sleeps.
On a Monday night, yeah. Hey, it was 2 big points for the hockey club against one of the league's best teams in the Winnipeg Jets last night. It was a real character win. I think it's one of the biggest wins of the year for this group, and they did it without 2 of their best players, Dylan Guenther and Mikhail Sergachev, banged up. So it says a lot about this team. The captain, Clayton Keller, got hit in the eye with a puck, went back to the room, got 12 stitches, comes right out, and helps contribute to the game's first goal. I mean, it was just a whale of a night at Delta Center.
He got hit in the eye. Cut me, Mick. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when they come out, you know, they still got the adrenaline pumping, all that stuff, and it doesn't look as bad when they're on the bench. But usually after the game, in the post-game media scrum, you can see it start to swell up a little bit. So I'm sure he's got a pretty nice shiner here today.
You mentioned the best win of the year. Obviously, they beat the Minnesota Wild. That was a good win. They beat Winnipeg. That was a good win. They had the 6-0 win over Vegas, who leads their division. That's a good win. Am I missing something else? What is the best win of the year?
I think it's got to be this one. I think when you consider the circumstance, you know, we're rolling along here in January, and we're kind of getting to the point in the year where you need to pick up points, and you're starting to look at the standings. And I thought Winnipeg brought it tonight, or last night. I don't think the Jets played a bad game like that. 6-0 win against Vegas. The Golden Knights came out pretty flat, and give credit to Utah. They put up 4 goals in the first period, and Jackson Stauber had himself a nice night in net. But last night against the Jets, you're playing a team that seemingly doesn't have any weaknesses. I mean, they're a top 3 offensive team. They have the best goalie in the NHL. They have multiple lines that could score, and Utah matched them for the first half of the game, and then right after they saw their captain come back onto the ice after injury, they rallied around him and scored a couple goals there in the second, and then added some insurance in the third.
The win is very impressive, you know, particularly they've been struggling to score goals, and obviously they got a lot of them, and they got momentum and all that. And so the mark of any individual, the mark of any great team is consistency. And we've been talking about consistency with this team now for multiple months. So is the consistency actually the inconsistency, or is there the possibility of them getting consistent in terms of winning?
I think part of the consistency issue is the fact that for a lot of this season, and especially now, Utah gets in these situations where you'll get guys playing just simply more minutes than probably what they should. And there's a lot of math and philosophy that goes into this. But you look at a guy like Michael Kesselring, who had a power play goal a couple nights ago against St. Louis. He's a pretty young defenseman, but is really talented. And without Mikhail Sergachev in the lineup these last couple nights, he's had to play more. And other guys have had to play more. Ian Cole, a veteran defenseman, has had to play, you know, upwards of 22, 23 minutes, when instead he probably should be playing 21 minutes or something along those lines. These are kind of arbitrary numbers, but the point remains the same. Without guys in the lineup and with a younger team, you get some guys that kind of get exposed by playing a little bit more than what they should. And so I think that's where some of what we call the inconsistency comes into play, where these guys are just being put in more situations than what they're used to. And I think that can take its toll. It can be okay in a short sample size, but over time, they get exposed, and that's when you need those steady hands to eat up minutes, especially defensively. A guy like Mikhail Sergachev, who's a minute muncher. I mean, he plays as much as anybody in the NHL, and to have him out of the lineup is a huge gap defensively for Utah. But guys have stepped up, and Kesselring and Cole were pretty good last night. Nick DeSimone is the next man into the lineup. He's filled in on that third defensive pair. And then John Marino as well, coming back from injury. He's still only 4 games into his season. He's been good in an expanded role as he still tries to get his sea legs here. So everybody has to step up and pull on the rope a little bit harder. But it'll be another great test coming up on Thursday against the Minnesota team that is not all that far behind what Winnipeg can do.
I'm about to drop an oxymoron in you that will require all the academic prowess of a Purdue Boilermaker to straighten out. Focus. Even though it was a long Monday night and Tuesday morning after the win, you had to focus on this. I would just like to see partial consistency out of them. Now, partial consistency, I get some of the up and down performances against the top of the league and even the middle of the league. They're 4 points out of a berth. Now, the Calgary has a game in hand, so maybe ultimately they'll be 6 points out. We'll see what Calgary does with that extra game. The reason they're out is what they've done against the bottom of the league. Can they at least take care of business? Because right now I can look at a road trip and say, you're playing the top teams in the league, you're playing the middle, you're playing the bottom, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. But it's a waste of time because they're all over the map. Can they at least start beating the teams that are in the bottom third of the league? Because those points alone would make this playoff race look very different.
Yeah, and it is regrettable. I mean, you think back to a couple games where Utah blew a 3+ goal lead. I mean, they're leading by 3 against San Jose and Anaheim. The Ducks and the Sharks, 2 of the worst teams in the league, and they blow both of those games, and they pick up 1 point, but they should have picked up 2 in each of those. And, it's interesting because last night, without 2 of your best players and against one of the league's best in Winnipeg, there was definitely like a galvanizing type of feel, like an us versus them type of mentality and a certain urgency that came in. But when Utah was up 4-1 against the lowly San Jose Sharks back in October, the team lost that feel, right? They lost that urgency and that desperation that we saw from them last night in a high pressure scenario. And so, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. This team has got to figure out a way to find that desperation against the teams that it, quote unquote, should beat. But that's the NHL. It's a salary cap league. Every single team is capable of beating anybody on any given night, even if you're up 4-1 on them. And that's a hard lesson that Utah hopefully has learned and hopefully will fuel them in future 4-1 leads when they're up over one of the lower teams in the standings. But this team has 13 blown lead losses, and holding a lead is something that Utah has struggled with a bit, although they were able to seal it last night when they needed to. And there's not going to be a lot of easy games coming up. You've got 3 games on this road trip on the way against teams that are in playoff positions. You got Minnesota, Winnipeg again, and then the Ottawa Senators, who have looked really good since they last saw Utah and beat the wheels off Utah 4-0 at Delta Center.
I'm wondering, as you say, that any team can beat any team on any given night, and we've seen that particularly with this team as they go on the road, that it really doesn't matter that they're on the road when they get to playing the actual games, but maybe the road trip in and of itself is what's difficult, meaning just having to travel and having to go to different cities and all that stuff, as opposed to just playing the games, is more the road trip itself has the negative effect rather than them being able to win on the road, because they've proven they've win on the road. What do you think about that theory?
I think that's definitely baked into kind of the road records in the NHL is the travel, especially in the Western Conference. I mean, Utah is going to be spending as much time in the air, this team, as anybody in the NHL. I don't have the exact miles or minutes in the air, but I know that this team is going to be flying and spending as much time on a plane as any other team across the league. And so that definitely wears on you. And coming up, we've got a back-to-back Minnesota and Winnipeg, back-to-back nights. So that's a little difficult. But to be honest, guys, they make the travel as easy as possible on you. I mean, You drive onto the tarmac. There's a charter plane waiting for you. When you get on board, they ask you if you want steak or chicken. Like you're not exactly waiting at the security gate for an hour trying to pass through, and you're not taking your shoes off or anything in the TSA line. So it's a pretty glamorous way to travel, and they put us up in nice hotels. It's a far cry from the bus rides of the minor leagues, which a lot of these guys have had to endure.
What do you think a game like the win over Winnipeg does for someone like Josh Doan, who's been sent down, been called back on the fringe of that, to get out there and to have 2 assists and help build that lead? It's got to be a major confidence boost, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he got sent down to Tucson just to touch the puck a little bit more. He was starting to play, closer to 10 minutes a night earlier in the season. And once you're playing 10 minutes or less a night, that's kind of when I think General Manager Bill Armstrong would rather see a young guy spend time in the AHL and feel the puck and be an important part of that team. And he did. He played really well in the American Hockey League, comes back up, and he's been a factor. Him and Barrett Hayton, I was talking with Doan about this earlier, him and Hayton form a really nice kind of 2-man group on that forward line. They're both really hard on pucks. Josh Doan has an unbelievable stick on the primary assist that he gave to Barrett Hayton. He lifts the stick of Neil Pionk and then plays the puck over to Barrett Hayton all in one motion. I mean, it was a really savvy play from a kid who's just 22 years old, and I think he has such a bright future just because he's hard to play against, but he's also got a lot of skill that can lead to offense. And we saw that last night, that line of Josh Doan and Barrett Hayton, along with Matias Michelli, who's the third man on that group. They produced 2 goals in the third period for Utah to really kind of establish firm control of that game. And they ended up needing those goals because Winnipeg came back with a pair in the third.
What's the prognosis for Sergachev?
Yeah, he was supposed to be doubtful last night. Like there was a chance he would play. He came onto the ice before morning skate and then, realized he wasn't going to be able to go. So he's still technically going to be day-to-day, it sounds like. I don't know his prognosis as far as if he's even going to travel or anything like that. I haven't heard from Bear on that. But my hope would be that we see him at some point on the road trip. But he was listed as doubtful, essentially, for that game last night. And once he got on the ice and tried to go in the morning, it was no dice. So hopefully we get him back at some point soon because he's a huge piece to this team. And if this team is going to be a playoff team, they need number 98 back in the lineup.
Is that no dice or no ice?
It's no dice at the Shark Club in Manitoba, the casino attached to the connected to the rink. No dice for Mikey. I'm going to be playing this one close to the vest on the road trip. Got to button it up, guys, for these 2 coming up. 2 big games.
Sure.
Mike, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the trip. Good luck on that, and we will talk to you again next week.
Yeah, guys. Thank you again. Appreciate it.